Hey everyone, welcome back to the PAC-South Podcast. And just like that, we are down to the final two teams of the college football season. Um, wow, this has been another great season. NIL era, I think, continues to create this insane level of parity that only the year 2007 was able to create. Pat, how are we feeling? Miami and Indiana, our final two teams.
Yeah, I think this is a great matchup. Indiana kind of has turned itself into a juggernaut this year. I think a lot of people, myself included, thought that Oregon had a decent shot at maybe knocking them off. And I now feel very foolish for picking the Ducks to beat the Hoosiers. Last week, Indiana just looked like an absolute team on a mission, totally cohesive. And you can tell that Kurt Signetti's backing up his quote from before he was hired. Look me up, I win. He's proven that very, very true in his short time in Bloomington.
Yeah, no, 100%. And on the flip side of things, this has been a great, definitely like second half of the season for Miami. They had some like faltering there in the middle, but great second half of the season. The committee does show them love and put them into the playoff. And everyone's kind of like, oh, this is not right. Notre Dame should be here. Alabama should not. Miami should not. There was lots of conversation about
Yeah.
that this season, more than probably others. Last season we had a lot of conversation about 9-3 SEC teams, but this was all teams that had over 10 wins. So by last year's metrics, all deserving, but still a conversation starter. But they get into the playoff and they did what they needed to do. They go to College Station, they get a win. They get another upset win in the quarterfinals, and now they're here in the finals after a great semifinal victory. So Miami's a great story, kind of a David and Goliath for a national title in a sense. Um, First time we've seen this since TCU and Georgia. Yeah, we know what happened there. Do we think that there's a repeat of that? This is like two differently like sized teams.
I'm gonna say no. I think Miami will keep it competitive. They've been playing, like you said, a lot cleaner, a lot better football since their two stumbles, I guess you could say, that I think most ACC fans didn't even see coming. Um, and I think this is a Miami team that, just like Indiana, is highly motivated to prove that they belong on this stage. They belong in this national championship. Granted, it's not going to be a home crowd ticket wise because of the way that NCAA runs it, but it is in Miami, right? It's not the old Orange Bowl in terms of home field advantage, but
Yeah.
at least they're playing at home in a familiar place. They don't have to go through travel and things like that. Um, so I think it'll be a really good game. I think it's going to be an interesting one. Uh, I know we're holding off on score predictions for a little bit, but I do think it's going to be competitive.
Yeah. No, it's we'll get into a little bit more specifics obviously later, but yeah, I think this is not going to be a TCU Georgia, but it is kind of the same vibe going into it. We just are kind of a little wary, I guess, here on the podcast because of what happened in that game. Somehow that national title game is the largest margin of defeat for a bowl game in history. So pretty
Uh-huh.
significant stuff there from the Georgia TCU game and then mirroring here. We're going to go on now to our portal performers. We're both going to list off two of what we think are top performing teams. And I feel like I have to start off with the most talked about team lately, and that's LSU. LSU has really been making their splashes now. They're getting their playmakers. Um, Probably behind the scenes pulling the strings with the Damon Williams situation from Washington. Um, but nonetheless, they have stayed out of that as a confirmed party. But they get their quarterback in Sam Levitt. He does officially commit a couple days ago to the Tigers. They have backups in place for him as well. The guy out of App State and the kid from Southern Cal as well. So I mean, they have a pretty good quarterback room now, and they're continuing to load up on options. Lane Kiffin has put himself a pretty nice staff together on short notice and with the weird Ole Miss on rental situation. So I mean, given what he has and what he has had through this process, I think Lane Kiffin and LSU has done a very good job in the portal and using the resources that LSU committed to Lane, and part of the reason that he's in Baton Rouge. My other team is going to be Texas Tech. Obviously, Texas Tech has been talked about through this entire NIL era with just how much money they are pouring into the program. And, they're getting their dividends immediately. First Big 12 championship in school history. Now, you can be a Texas, an OU, whoever fan and say, well, you had to wait for us to leave to win it. I don't know if that would have played a part. I think Texas Tech still would have been on top of the conference this season. I mean, had they played either of those two teams, not saying they would win every matchup, but I think they would be favored in the matchup.
Yeah.
So Red Raiders are doing a great job. They basically doubled down on what's his name, Blake Morton, not
Baron
Blake
Morton.
Morton, Baron Morton, as a quarterback, and went and got Brendan Sorsby, proven guy out of Cincinnati. Really plays a almost identical style of football to Morton. So that offense is going to transition from one to the other, I think, very smoothly. They're continuing to get weapons on that defense, just continuing to keep that identity that the Red Raiders have, following in Jacob Rodriguez and I forget the D lineman's name in classic TJ fashion, but really continuing the Red Raider tradition of these past couple seasons in building the same defense, the same offense. So I really like Texas Tech and LSU this cycle.
Yeah, I'm going to go one team, I guess, that's kind of keeping continuity, preventing a lot of, we'll say, like star guys from leaving in Oregon. Right? They made that great run this year, proved to a certain extent that Dan Lanning can win against, we'll say, top opponents and in big games, right? Obviously, the Indiana loss kind of dampened that a little bit. But getting Dylan Raiola out of the portal was a huge get for them, securing the quarterback position. It kind of seems like that's the Oregon formula to success, is just pay a lot of money for guys who are kind of fully developed already to come in, play quarterback for you. But, I mean, you can't argue with the results. This is their second CFP in a row. If Michael Penix didn't exist, who knows? Maybe they would have really ran the Pac-12 in its last official year. Things like that. You've had good quarterback play the past few years, right? You're securing that. They get a big safety transfer out of Minnesota. I believe he was the number one safety in the portal. So you're seeing Oregon sort of shoring up some areas that could have been potential concerns for them moving forward. I'd like to see them shore up running back a little bit so we don't have a scenario like happened against Indiana where you've got two defensive guys in the middle of the week switching over and playing running back. Saw a video out there of somebody breaking down tape in that game where one of the substitute, I guess you could call them, or emergency running backs, whenever it was a pass play, he wouldn't put in his mouth guard. So Indiana, obviously, I'm sure, cued on that, and that helped a little bit in their defensive domination. But I like what Oregon's done. And then from a different perspective, I like that South Carolina has totally sort of revamped their offensive line under Kendall Briles. We know how much of a struggle it was for them this past season to protect Lenora Sellers, to really establish any type of consistent run game. So hopefully for Shane Beamer and company, this means change is coming in that regard. Obviously going out and getting Jabri Coleman from Penn State. Not Penn State. Yeah, Penn State, Jabri Coleman. Yeah. That shores up the running back position a little bit, getting the top interior or offensive tackle, not interior offensive lineman. And Jacarius Peak from NC State. That was a huge get as well. And then getting some other, we'll say, bigger transfers, right? Sam Dixon coming from Ohio State. That's who I was thinking. At running back, you've got Turbo coming to sort of shore up the wide receiver position a little bit, give some explosive Nitro, whatever. Pull the there. But regardless, shoring up wide receiver, giving some options besides Nick Harbor for Lenoris to throw it to. I just like what Carolina's been able to do in establishing depth and replacing obviously a lot of guys who left in the transfer portal on that offensive line. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing remains TBD, but I like the progress that they've made.
And one note I will make on South Carolina before we move into our next little category. South Carolina really putting a large emphasis on offense, obviously with keeping Lenore Sellers. That was probably the selling point, was they needed to build around him, and I would say that they have in this portal. But you had a few guys late declare for the draft on defense. Those are holes that need to be fixed. South Carolina currently quiet in those categories. So it should be interesting to see how they finish the portal process with this offense they're building and the defense that now has a couple question marks. Moving to our next category, though, if you watched, listened, or both last week, we've finally debuted what we've been working on in the background, and that's the PAC-South Conference. So if you did not listen last week, we have some temporary members and we have some permanent members, but every season we have anywhere from 10 to 14 football members and additionally 2 to 4 basketball and baseball members. We announced our 2025-26 college football champion, PAC-South champion, Duke. Duke had a great season. They really led the way in points. That's right. I said points is a points-based system for how you get it because these teams don't have head-to-head matchups, and it's a kind of way to balance out our Power 4 games, our group of 6, 5.5 games. So we're now moving into basketball season, and since we had all the shine on the Duke Blue Devils last week, we'll talk about kind of our mid-season performers. We'll start in women's basketball for the PAC-South Conference. All the teams are the exact same that were in football that we listed last week, except Providence and St. Louis are both permanent members of the PAC-South Conference as well. So as we're looking to the women's basketball standings, team we just mentioned in St. Louis, they are down there toward the bottom with 21 points. Not last, though. That is Florida State. Florida State, shockingly, having a bad season at women's basketball. Obviously, South Carolina portals, the number one guard in the country, top scorer from Florida State. Very obvious that was the key part for the Seminoles. They were not able to answer that question mark. Speaking of South Carolina, number one currently in the standings. They have 122 points. Those points can fluctuate up and down depending on where teams fall in the quads. South Carolina followed by Iowa State at 73 points and Duke at 70. So there's a pretty large gap currently between first and second. South Carolina, Iowa State, both teams that we are picking later on. Going over to men's basketball, I don't think that there's much surprise in men's basketball. Central Michigan, currently one of the worst programs in the country, and it shows in our standings. They are currently bottom with 6 points only when you have Duke at the top with 137 points. Not far behind, though, Iowa State. Iowa State having good men's and women's basketball this year, 119 points for them. Then UCF, a fringe top 25 team right now, in third place at 82. Something of note, which we may talk about more in depth just on its own. So Florida State women, they were down there at the bottom of our PAC-South standings. Florida State men, second to bottom. What's going on in Tallahassee? Those are two basketball teams. They're usually really good in the men and women, both not getting it done. What have you seen in Tallahassee?
Yeah, I think Florida State's kind of, I guess, struggled a little bit identity-wise for a few years in basketball. The end of the Leonard Hamilton era wasn't great. They fell off pretty sharply from, like you said, a perennial tournament team, a team that made some Sweet 16, some Elite 8 runs, to a team that now struggles for, I'll say a solid identity. They did play Duke close a few weeks ago. However, close doesn't really count when we're looking at our points tally, and they wound up losing to Syracuse yesterday night, and this is not a great Syracuse team, so I don't know. FSU's definitely floundering a little bit on the men's side. They've got a fairly young coach. I want to say he's in his mid-30s. who is an alumni. So hopefully he can turn things around, get them trending in the right direction. But it's not looking great for FSU hoops right now.
Would we say that this is a direct effect from Florida being a now top team in college basketball again? Now that they've rebuilt, winning the national title last season, you have a UCF program in the Big 12 now that is kind of starting to live up to Big 12 basketball standards. I mean, it's kind of you do or you don't. You're either going to get left behind. And I mean, UCF has some good wins. They've played, I think, or this upcoming week, they play the number 1 and number 2 team in the country. So we will know exactly what UCF is after this week. Obviously, other programs like South Florida trying to build themselves up to a power conference. Is this a cause from Florida State, or is this just poor coaching?
I think really the issue was that Leonard Hamilton was such a legend at FSU. It was kind of hard for them to fire him or push him out the door. He did establish really strong patterns for success. He was consistent with making the tournament. They weren't really that bad last year. They were kind of like a fringe, very outside chance bubble team, but there were some conversations around Florida State last year. But I don't know. It's just a tough position, and I feel like almost in a way like they just haven't recovered since the COVID season, if that makes sense. Like they were a pretty good team that year. They were on track to make the tournament. The following season, 2021, they do make the tournament. However, they haven't made it since the 2021 tournament. I don't know. I feel like they almost just got complacent, got stuck a little bit. And like you said, there are some more teams vying for prospects or recruits in the state of Florida now. It's not just UF and FSU. UCF's been on sort of the come up since the Taco Fall era, slid back a little bit, but now seems to be riding the ship. USF had some really good years. Unfortunately, their coach passed away, and that kind of like threw them into a period of, I guess, confusion. But again, they're a pretty solid team this year. So I think competing against all those other guys, FAU, now that they're in the American, coming off a Final Four run, I think FSU definitely has to consider spending some more resources on men's basketball because as a whole, their athletic department is really just floundering right now outside of baseball.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, baseball has been kind of that anchor for Florida State, which is funny historically speaking. Yes, baseball's been very good, but usually they can still fall back onto a very good football team and or a very good basketball team. And right now it is only spring sports that is keeping the Seminoles afloat. So very interesting there. One final parting question for you. Our 5, 6, and 7 teams, we have New Mexico, St. Louis, and Notre Dame. Of those teams, who do you think can get into the top 3 in the conference?
I would say St. Louis because I know we do put a pretty heavy weight on there for being, I believe for basketball, we might do it a little differently, but like being regular season champ for your conference and then obviously like winning your conference tournament, potentially earning a bid, stuff like that. And I think St. Louis is in a really, really good position to do that. The A-10 is strong this year. Dayton is a good team despite some losses.
We mentioned them a few weeks ago. How we were like, where's Dayton? Dayton's shown back up. They're back again.
I mean, VCU is a really strong team. They lost the other day, but still had good results. George Mason is kind of like the surprise of the year. They're having a fantastic season right now. I believe they're still 13-1. So they're vying right there with St. Louis for the top of the A-10, but I think St. Louis has the best shot out of those teams. You know, the Mountain West is really deep this year. New Mexico is certainly near the top, but Utah State just looks like an absolute juggernaut. And San Diego State is always a really solid program. So I feel like it'll be tough for New Mexico to win the Mountain West. And Notre Dame has shown flashes, and then they just kind of lose games and lose to teams that they really shouldn't, like Purdue, Fort Worth.
Yeah, very true. You mentioned Utah State, so I have to bring this up. This was a crazy funny, like not scandal, but like kind of like thing that happened. Boise State offered essentially free attendance to any student anywhere in the country to, like, if you had a valid student ID, you could get into the basketball game for free. That game was Boise State versus Utah State. Utah State was like 3 hour, 4 hour drive from Logan. Yeah, we'll go. So Boise State tried to scramble to like change the policy to only Idaho students, only Idaho IDs. Um, didn't matter. Utah State like not fully took over the arena, but like they had a presence. They were very loud,
Mm-hmm.
and Utah State did end up winning that game. And there's a pretty funny picture of all the Utah State students that were there and the team after that matchup. So Boise State thought they were going for something, and it was a great idea on paper.
Yeah, yeah.
However, it was a little too good idea because everyone else saw it, and Utah State took advantage of it. So very funny. We love like stuff like that from college sports, and that is, I believe, a rivalry that will go to the Pac-12 next year.
Yes. Yes.
So that's very good for basketball. Boise State, kind of up and coming, not up and coming, but like they're like just on the fringe. And then Utah State, I feel like, has had a little bit more success of a on the fringe team, more so bubble team at that point. So should be interesting to see Pac-12 basketball, kind of who can dethrone Gonzaga, I feel like, at that point. Neither here nor there. That is next season. We are on this season and this channel. Once again, we want to talk about our new YouTube channel, the PAC-South Podcast. We are moving everything PAC-South from 626 Productions over to this new YouTube channel. And obviously, if you listened last week, we are now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Substack. Coming soon still. A little bit of issues there. Not 100% sure. But that will be coming soon. But yes, we are very happy with all the support on all the platforms, and we look to continue like creating new content and new ideas for you with the new YouTube channel and being able to kind of more easily distribute our podcast onto these other outlets. So thank you all so much. If you could give us a like, subscribe, follow, down whatever it is on certain platforms, it would mean the world to us as we continue to figure out what we're doing. As we kind of just know how to talk some sports, and we're doing this in the meantime. So again, thank you for all the support thus far. And that, Pat, brings us over to our predictions for this week. So kind of a in-between episode because of the national title. But we will start with our men's basketball. This game is on Saturday, January 17th. We have number 19 Florida against currently, it's a good change, number 10 Vanderbilt in Nashville. First of all, for Florida State is not putting their athletics department, Vanderbilt is certainly taking advantage of it.
Definitely.
Great football season. Currently the best basketball team in school history, best start. They're breaking records left and right for the Commodores. Unfortunately for them, this is a bad time to play Florida, I think. I think this Florida team is starting to get themselves in gear. It was a very slow start. Maybe we can blame that on a national championship hangover to start the season. I do like for Vanderbilt that this game is at home, but the pressure is really starting to mount. An undefeated record in any sport is hard, let alone basketball. And you're running into a very good, very hot team in Florida. So I like the Gators to kind of spoil this part of Vanderbilt's season.
Yeah, I don't know. I've kind of been going back and forth on this one. Like you said, Vandy's a really, really good team. I believe they're top 5 in KenPom this year, just to kind of highlight how the advanced statistics and net ratings sort of perceive them. And if they are top 5, that means they're in a group with Michigan, Arizona. I know they lost yesterday, but Iowa State's still clearly a really good team. So they're really in that upper echelon of college basketball, you know? I'm kind of back and forth because I did share the same ideas that you did. Florida is meshing really well right now. They're playing solid basketball. Xavier Lee seems to be kind of figuring it out a little bit. Boogie Flan's getting more and more comfortable. But this Vandy team is just such a, I don't know, fun story. They're very cohesive in the way they play. And it seems like every time they need a big shot, they get one. I was at the Vanderbilt South Carolina game to start SEC play. South Carolina trimmed it to as few as 3 points at one point, and then Vandy just went on this crazy run, and next thing you knew, it was 19 points. So it just kind of shows the offensive firepower that they really have and kind of the defensive tenacity they play with. So for that reason, and because it's at Memorial, I'm going to go with Vandy on this one.
Okay. We'll take a split in our first game. Second game, a Super Tuesday matchup, January 20th. We have number 25 Seton Hall currently. That's seed or ranking could change by the time this game tips off. 25 Seton Hall versus St. John's in the Big Apple. Personally, I don't really have a lot going into this game outside of I really like what Rick Pitino has done. Obviously, he has reinvigorated himself in this kind of like second part of his career. And like he's a winner. Like everywhere he goes, he wins. Obviously, St. John's has had a little bit slower of a start, you could say, to start this year. And Seton Hall is kind of like, I feel like in a bad position, you could say, mainly in the sense of this 25 ranking. I'm pretty sure this number is cursed this year. I believe of the last 6 weeks, once someone gets ranked 25th, I believe 4 of them have lost. So just bad numbers for the Pirates here. So I'm going to go with the Johnnies. I like St. John's, get it done at home. Again, these Tuesday games are weird. I get it. It's basketball. We're playing a lot of games. But like in college, these kids, midweek games, it's a little different. Traveling's not great.
Yeah. I actually am going to go in a different direction on this one. I'm going to go with the Hall here. I think Shaheen Holloway has done a really good job answering some questions that were raised about him validly. After a really down year last year for Seton Hall, they pulled in some transfers that were supposed to compete and bring them to a high level, like Garway Dual from Providence, and it just never really clicked and meshed for them last year. So I think Holloway really came in with a target on his back, and there were some questions, if it doesn't start going well, is he going to get fired? And he and this team have responded really magnificently. Obviously, tough loss last night to UConn, but still hanging with a top 5 team, keeping it to a really close game and only losing by 5. I know there's no such thing as moral victories, but it makes you feel good as a program that you are trending in the right direction. Most of the time I'll say that. Maybe not indicative of Providence, but I digress. Regardless, I really like the basketball that Seton Hall has been playing. They've got some really good wins under their belt, particularly in Maui. So yeah, give me the Pirates.
Okay. Moving from men's basketball to women's basketball, our current number 1 team in the PAC-South Conference, South Carolina, will host number 4 ranked Texas. 2 juggernauts this season. First time they are on the court together. I think this is going to be great. This is happening tomorrow night, so Thursday, January 15th. If you're able to watch it, this is going to be at least one of these teams will be in the Final Four this season. This is going to be a great display. South Carolina has kind of shored up their bigs question with the injury to Chloe Kitts. And actually, funny enough, South Carolina has released a video of her rehabbing 3 months after her injury. She might be ready for a tournament run with how well she's coming along. So we are not 100% sure there if she does actually decide to come back and play. That would be huge for the Gamecocks. Obviously not available in this one. Don't think that that's going to matter as much. South Carolina's really getting their scoring in gear, and that defense has continued to be just a brick wall for them. I don't think the Longhorns will be able to score enough through that defense to keep up with what the Gamecocks have typically put up on offense. So, therefore, give me the Gamecocks.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a really good game. Obviously, we saw this matchup one time already with Texas coming out the victor in that one. I think this year for, we'll say, the SEC, really, because these are kind of the top dogs, we're going to, see this matchup quite frequently, right? We saw it, where was that, Vegas, where they played the first time? And then we're going to see it again here, probably see it in an SEC tournament, um, probably see it at some stage of the NCAA tournament, right? Especially if these are 2 1 seeds that might meet in the Final Four. I don't know. I think the fact that this is at Colonial Life or in Columbia helps South Carolina here. I think this is going to be a close game, but I like South Carolina to win this one in conference play.
Okay, first one together there. Next matchup, women's basketball again. This is our typical kind of Sunday matchup that I associate so much with, like, especially bigger programs in women's basketball. It's number 19 Iowa State versus Oklahoma State. I don't need to spend much time on this one because, as I mentioned before, South Carolina are number 1 team in the PAC-South rankings. Iowa State at number 2. Iowa State looks very good, both men's and women's basketball this year. Women's, I feel like, is going to be kind of like one of those sneaky teams where they're kind of going to be lingering like a 3 or a 4 seed, and they're going to get some wins in that tournament. Obviously, we're not at tournament time right now, but Oklahoma State, not where you want to be right now. Not where you want to be. I like the Cyclones big.
Yeah, I like Iowa State here as well. Audi is just a menace in the post. Absolute footwork off the charts. You see her play, and it's just so fundamental in the post. She knows how to use her advantages to benefit her. She knows how to use her footwork efficiently. I think she's a really fun player to watch, even though she's not the most explosive player on the court. So yeah, give me the clones.
Okay, riding together for women's basketball. Now, obviously, the biggest thing on our show in college football this week, period. This is the national championship with the 10-seeded Miami Hurricanes against the number 1 overall seed Indiana Hoosiers. We already mentioned this game is being played at Hard Rock, so this is a de facto home game for the Hurricanes, so the players can stay at home. Obviously, they have that comfort level. Indiana says, screw it, I don't care about comfort level. We're just going to go somewhere and just put on a clinic. They went to the Rose Bowl, destroyed Alabama. They go to what's Cotton Bowl or
Peach.
Where were they?
Peach.
They were in the Peach.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, go to the Peach, get it done. I mean, this is kind of a special team. You don't really see teams like this. This is a team full of 3 stars, group of 5 transfers that followed Signetti from James Madison, and they just fully bought into him. Like, it's curious. I don't want to focus too much on the future because we have this game here now for the championship. But I mean, Mark Cuban has put in a lot of money for NIL. Yeah. Other boosters have, and it's like, what is Indiana going to be/do with now these potential 4 or 5-star recruits from high school? Great portal gets when they're doing this with these guys. I mean, this is incredible. Like the players, like, it is essentially Moneyball this year, but then next year they're going to have all the money that they can ever do with. So it's crazy to think that this team is this dominant. They're the only team to win off of a bye week in the college football playoff. So it's kind of hard to not say Hoosiers. But this Miami team, I don't know. Carson Beck playing good football. He's proven that he can win games like he did at Georgia for a national title, making these playoffs runs. I don't know. I like that it's at home for the Hurricanes. The defense playing with that Miami attitude. I think that they can slow Indiana. But no, Indiana's still too good. I'm going to take the Hoosiers here. I like them 41-31. 41-31. Originally it was going to be 24. I think Miami will get 31 points. It'll be lower scoring for majority of the game, I would say. Like, lower scoring is in like sub 30. But I think Indiana's kind of want to break the floodgates. And Miami's just not going to be able to keep up whenever Indiana starts rolling like that. So Hoosiers 41-31.
Yeah. Everything we've seen this season really kind of points to what you described, right? Indiana is just this really strong team that plays as one unit, has pretty much embarrassed everybody that they've played in the CFP, and is just looking like They just got to roll out of bed and show up, and they'll be national champions next Monday night. Everything's telling me to pick Indiana, but, they say you dance with the one who got you there. I've been riding Miami the entire playoff. I feel like I'm an honorary Kane at this point. I got to hit up Danny Boy Kane, see if he can do something for me. Regardless, I'm throwing up the U. Probably stupid, but give me Miami, and I'll say 31-28, last second field goal to win it.
Walk-off field goal for the Natty. That would be amazing. Either way, this is a great story. You're getting a Cinderella run from Miami, a team who has not won in over 20 years and hasn't even really been close to the stage in that time. And then obviously Indiana, first potential national championship in school history. Yeah, this is going to be great. This is why we watch football. This is why college football is the best in college sports. So we look forward to watching it. We will go over whatever transpires, whatever fallout we have from the national title next week on the podcast. But for Pat, I'm TJ. Yes, I got my name right this time, and we will see you all next time.